You tied my son to your back like you own him? Damien exploded, his voice like thunder through the marble halls of Villa Vizcaya. But Nora didn't tremble. She turned slowly from the stove, eyes steady. No, Mr. James, she said quietly. I tied him because he wouldn't stop crying for a mother who's never coming back. That was the moment everything shattered. The morning sun stretched lazily across the pristine marble floors of the mansion. A soft golden glow spilled in through the towering windows, kissing the ornate crown moldings and $30,000 chandelier above the grand dining hall. Villa Vizcaya was alive with silence, the kind of heavy, spotless quiet that came from money, control, and grief. Damien James stood in his office, staring at a bottle of Macallan he hadn't touched in weeks. His suit jacket hung crisply over the back of a leather chair, his crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He was scheduled for a call with European investors at 9 hours sharp, but his mind wasn't on business. It hadn't been, not really, for the past 2 years. Not since Melissa died. Not since Edwin was born into a nursery filled with silence and questions. Nora Thomas knew silence too. She moved through the back kitchen barefoot, humming low under her breath. She wasn't like the previous maids. She didn't wear perfume, didn't gossip, didn't tiptoe around wealth like it might break. Her presence was quiet but grounded. On her back, snug against a colorful wrap of traditional fabric, Edwin slept peacefully, his tiny breath warm against her shoulder blade. It was a practice she learned long ago from her grandmother in Georgia, who learned it from hers in Ghana. It was a way of keeping the baby close, of letting him hear your heart. It calmed him. It made him feel loved. It was what she did every morning, after the boy cried himself hoarse in the crib. He needed warmth, not monitors, not mobiles. He needed someone. But what Nora didn't know was that Damien had come home early, his meeting rescheduled last minute. He wasn't expecting to see her in the back kitchen. He definitely wasn't expecting to see his son tied to her back like he'd come out of her body. And just like that, he snapped. You tied my son to your back like you own him? No, Mr. James, Nora said, steady as stone. I tied him because he wouldn't stop crying for a mother who's never coming back. Time stood still. In that moment, Damien wasn't a billionaire. Nora wasn't just a maid. There was a child between them, sleeping, trusting, fragile, and 2 broken adults caught in a storm of pain neither of them had asked for. Before we go further, if this moment hit you, even just a little, then you know this story is going to be different. So don't just watch and scroll, subscribe right now, because every day we bring you real, raw stories that make you feel something again. The words still hung in the air like smoke. Damien's chest rose and fell, jaw tight, heart pounding harder than he wanted to admit. Nora didn't look away. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She simply turned back to the stove, flipped the eggs, and kept moving, like he hadn't just tried to rip the floor from under her. Is this how you do things where you're from? He snapped, trying to reclaim control. Wrap babies like accessories? Her voice was calm, but it cut deeper than he expected. No, Mr. James, we wrap them like people, because they are. He blinked. She slid the eggs onto a plate, gently unwrapped Edwin from her back, and placed him in a nearby crib. His little fists balled up, and he stirred at the change. Nora leaned down and whispered something only the baby could hear. He settled again. There was a kind of grace in the way she moved. Not just skill, soul. And that made Damien even angrier. How you think because you hold him like that you know better? He growled. I don't know better, she said, rinsing the pan. I just know what love feels like and what it sounds like when it's missing. Her words were quiet, but they hit harder than any scream. Damien turned away, jaw clenched. He stared out the window toward the bay, where the water glistened in the morning sun. His own reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. He hated this feeling. He had hired Nora because of her calmness, because she didn't pry, didn't chatter, didn't try to fix him. She just showed up, fed his son, cleaned his home, kept to herself. But now, she was challenging something deeper, and that wasn't part of the contract. A memory slipped in uninvited. Melissa's voice soft and tired in that hospital bed. If anything happens, Let Edwin feel loved. Don't make him grow up lonely just because you did. Damien had buried those words. He'd buried everything, really. He turned back toward Nora, folding his arms. You could have asked, he said, voice lower now, about the rap, about touching him like that. If I'd asked, she said, turning to face him fully now, you would have said no. She wasn't wrong, and they both knew it. For the first time, Damien didn't have a reply, and for the first time, Nora didn't need one. Because the only sound that mattered now was Edwin's soft breathing from the crib, and somehow that silence spoke louder than anything either of them had said. At this point, what do you think he should do? Should Damien stick to his pride, or listen to his heart for once? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading everyone. The next morning at Villa Vizcaya, everything looked the same, but it felt completely different. The marble floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled. But the air was tight, like it was waiting for someone to breathe first. Damien sat at the kitchen island in the main dining area, sipping black coffee and scrolling through property proposals on his tablet. His expression was calm. Too calm, because behind his composed face he was replaying everything Nora had said. I tied him because he wouldn't stop crying for a mother who's never coming back. He'd barely slept, not because of the confrontation, but because Edwin had woken up at 2:14 a.m. screaming until he choked. The nanny cam showed Nora, barefoot, walking into the room, lifting the boy gently, pressing his face to her shoulder. And within seconds, silence. That image haunted him, not because it was wrong, but because it worked. Nora hadn't said a word to Damien since yesterday. She arrived on time, prepared Edwin's breakfast, kept her gaze lowered, and only spoke to the child, never to his father. To anyone else it looked professional, but to Damien it felt like punishment. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, as Damien adjusted his tie near the grand foyer, he spoke up. You know, if you're trying to make me feel guilty, it's working, he said without looking at her. Nora glanced up from tying Edwin's tiny shoes. That would require me thinking about your feelings, she said calmly. I'm too busy thinking about his. He exhaled through his nose. Look, I may have overreacted, but no need to explain, she cut in softly. You were scared. Happens to most fathers eventually. Her words weren't bitter. That made it worse. He expected anger, fire, a demand for an apology. But Nora gave him something he couldn't process, compassion, and it was suffocating, because he didn't know how to receive it. Didn't know what to do with the parts of himself that still missed Melissa, that still blamed himself for being too far away when she died, too cold, too buried in work, too him. Later that day, Damien cancelled 2 meetings. He claimed it was because of market shifts. But truthfully, he just couldn't stop watching the way Nora held Edwin when she thought no one was looking. The soft humming, the little bounce in her step, the way the boy reached for her when he was scared. Not him. He hated that. Not because it made her powerful, but because it made him irrelevant. Damien wanted to control the narrative again, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't the one holding the story. Miami's skies had darkened by late afternoon, thick clouds rolling in over Biscayne Bay like smoke. The storm hit quickly, thunder booming overhead, rain slamming against the villa's massive glass windows with a vengeance. The staff had all gone home early. A downed power line had blocked the road just outside the Vizcaya estate gates. No one was coming in, or out, which meant Damien, Nora, and Edwin were stuck inside, together. Well, Damien muttered, pacing near the fireplace. At least it's not a hurricane this time. No response. Nora sat in the living room, her feet tucked beneath her, Edwin curled in her arms, wrapped again in the cloth that had started it all. His eyelids fluttered sleepily. The thunder didn't even make him stir. Damien glanced over at them. The boy wasn't crying, he wasn't scared, he was safe, with her. You could use one of the guest bedrooms, Damien offered stiffly. No sense being uncomfortable on the couch all night. Nora looked up. I'm fine here. "You don't have to act like a servant when it's just us, Nora," he said, sitting across from her. She didn't flinch. "But I am one, aren't I?" Silence. The rain grew louder. A distant rumble of thunder rolled through the walls. "You're more than that," Damien said finally, his voice low. I didn't see it before." "You didn't want to see it," she replied. There was no accusation in her voice, just fact. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes on the child in her arms. "Why do you do it?" he asked. "Why him? Why stay here day after day, when I've made it so damn hard for you?" She looked down at Edwin, brushing a soft curl off his forehead. "Because he needs someone who doesn't quit on him." That sentence landed hard. A flicker of something unfamiliar crossed Damien's face. Guilt, maybe, or shame, or longing. "You remind me of her sometimes," he said quietly. "Melissa?" He nodded. She used to hum to him like that. Not with words. Just warmth. Nora's eyes softened slightly. "She loved him," she said. "That kind of love doesn't die with the body. It passes on. To whoever's willing to carry it." Lightning flashed. For a moment, the room lit up like a photo frozen in time. Nora holding the baby, Damien watching. 3 people from different worlds, somehow tethered by something unspoken. And for the first time in weeks, Damien didn't feel like a stranger in his own home. He just felt human. The storm passed by morning, leaving the garden soaked and the marble patio slick with rain. Inside Villa Vizcaya, the air was still, like the mansion itself was holding its breath. Damien stood in the hallway outside his late wife's old study. He hadn't been in there since the funeral. The door was always shut, the curtains always drawn. But today, it was open, and Nora was inside. She wasn't rummaging or cleaning. She was standing in front of a framed photo on the bookshelf. One Damien had forgotten was even there. It was of Melissa, 6 months pregnant, standing beside a black woman in a white lab coat. Both were smiling. Both had arms around each other. Damien's voice was a low warning. "What are you doing in here?" Nora didn't turn. "I didn't mean to." Edwin dropped his pacifier, and it rolled under the door. It was open when I came by. He stepped in, tension crawling across his shoulders. "You recognize her?" she asked, finally facing him and pointing to the woman in the lab coat. He nodded. "That's Dr. Lacey. Melissa's OB-GYN. Nora gave a soft, sad smile. "No. That's me." Damien blinked. "What?" She walked toward the photo, brushing her fingers across the glass. "Before your son. Before all this. I was a nurse. I worked in maternal care. Melissa was one of my last patients before I—" She stopped herself. "Before you what?" Damien asked, a note of urgency in his voice now. "Before I lost my license. Not for malpractice, not for drugs, for negligence. That's what the board called it." Her voice trembled for the first time. "My daughter, Isabella. She was 2. I was working a double shift at Jackson Memorial, short-staffed, covering for another nurse. I left her with a neighbor. She got into a swimming pool." Damien's breath caught. "I didn't even get to hold her goodbye," Nora whispered. "They buried her before I got there." The room fell silent. Damien had no words. He just stared at her, not as a maid, not even as a nurse, but as a mother who had known true, gut-wrenching loss. "After that, I stopped nursing. I couldn't be around babies. For years. But when Melissa died, when Edwin was born..." She paused. "I just knew. I couldn't let another child cry alone. Not if I could help it." The photo on the wall flickered in the morning light. Suddenly, everything Damien thought he knew about Nora, her quiet strength, her insistence on love, the way Edwin melted in her arms, all of it made sense. She wasn't just taking care of his son, she was atoning, and in a way so was he. The next evening, a strange peace settled over Villa Vizcaya, the kind of peace that doesn't come from silence, but from finally being seen. Damien stood barefoot in the nursery, watching Nora change Edwin's diaper with practiced ease. The baby cooed, reaching for her nose, giggling when she pretended to bite his hand. It was a soft moment. Gentle. Damien leaned against the doorway. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "Do what?" Nora replied, not looking up. "Make him laugh. Make him whole." She fastened the diaper, then turned. "I just let him feel what he feels. Babies don't hide." "No," Damien said, stepping inside. "That's just something we learn when we grow up." They sat on the floor, side by side, watching Edwin wobble between blocks and books. "Melissa always wanted a boy," Damien said, voice distant. "But she never imagined raising him without her." Nora nodded slowly. "And you never imagined raising him at all?" He looked at her, surprised. "That obvious?" "You love him, that's clear, but love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's confused and scared." Damien exhaled hard. His hands trembled slightly. "I didn't want to be my father," he whispered. "Cold, absent, distant. But when she died, I just shut off everything." "Grief doesn't ask for permission," Nora said gently. "And it never arrives alone. It brings fear, shame, guilt, silence." Edwin crawled into Nora's lap, curling up like a cat, his thumb in his mouth, his eyelids drooping. She smiled, rocking him gently. "He trusts you," Damien said, watching. "More than he trusts me." "He trusts both of us," she said. "But he needs one of us to go first." Damien looked confused. "Go first?" "Into love," she replied. "Into showing up, into trying again." Silence fell, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was peaceful. Damien reached out and gently touched Edwin's tiny foot. "I missed a lot," he said, "but I want to do better." Nora looked at him, really looked at him. "Then start with today," she said. "That's the only place love lives." They sat there in the quiet, a man and a woman from two different worlds, both learning how to feel again. No contracts, no roles, just connection. Something unspoken passed between them, not romantic, not yet, but honest. And it was enough. 3 days later, Villa Vizcaya felt warmer somehow. Lived in, softer. Damien had started feeding Edwin himself, clumsily, messily, but he tried. Nora still handled most of the heavy lifting, but for the first time since Melissa died, it didn't feel like a job. It felt like a family. And then, it happened. It started with a phone call. Damien had left his phone on the kitchen island during Edwin's nap. Nora was wiping down the counters when it rang. Davenport, Walsh Hart, law offices. The name caught her eye. She wasn't snooping, but something told her not to ignore it. A gut feeling. The voicemail played automatically. "Mr. James, just confirming your request to begin custody transfer proceedings. If your legal team still intends to remove Nora Thomas as guardian, without alerting her directly, we'll need documentation proving she's—" Nora froze. Her heart stopped beating. Or maybe it beat too fast. Either way, the room spun. Custody transfer. Guardian. He was going to fire her. Take Edwin from her. Quietly, legally, without even telling her. All that warmth, all that trust, was a lie? Damien entered moments later, laughing softly under his breath as he carried Edwin in one arm. "Look who refused his nap again." Nora turned to face him, voice flat. "When were you going to tell me?" Damien paused. "Tell you what?" "That you're having me legally removed from Edwin's care." His face shifted instantly. Shock, guilt, panic, but not denial. "Nora, it's not what you think." "You're right," she snapped, louder than she meant to. "I thought we were healing. I thought you were different. But I see now. I'm just the help again." "No," Damien said, setting Edwin down gently. "That's not fair. I started that process weeks ago, before everything changed. I didn't cancel it yet because He hesitated. "Because what?" she asked, eyes glassy. "Because deep down you still don't trust me?" Silence. That was the answer. She picked Edwin up. Not like a mother, not like a maid, but like someone protecting herself from being hurt again. "You don't get to cry in front of me, Damien. You don't get to open up, hold my pain in your hands, and then go behind my back. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said softly, but you did. She walked toward the stairs, every footstep heavier than the last. You're not afraid of losing your son, she said quietly, turning back once. You're afraid of needing someone and watching them leave, so you sabotage it first. Damien stood there, frozen, silent, too broken to defend himself, too proud to beg her to stay. And just like that, the bond they built cracked, maybe beyond repair. The house was too quiet without her. Villa Vizcaya's grandeur had returned to its default setting, hollow, echoing, lonely. Nora was gone. She hadn't stormed out. She didn't slam any doors. She just didn't come back the next morning. Damien sat in Edwin's nursery, elbows on his knees, eyes puffy from lack of sleep. The crib was full of soft blankets and expensive toys, but it felt cold. Edwin cried harder now, louder, longer. No rap on Nora's back, no humming voice, no steady arms, just him. He tried everything: books, bottles, songs. He even Googled how to carry a baby on your back like a black woman from Africa. Nothing worked, because this wasn't about skill, it was about presence, and hers was missing. Downstairs, Damien stood in front of the liquor cabinet he hadn't touched in a year. He stared at the bottle, then at the phone, then back at the bottle. And finally, he picked up the phone. At the same time, across town in a small apartment with a leaking faucet and too many memories, Nora held Edwin's bib in her lap. She hadn't meant to take it. It must have clung to her coat, or maybe she needed to hold on to something. The phone buzzed. Damien. She stared at it, let it ring, then picked it up. Hello? His voice was soft, worn out. I cancelled the custody order, he said. It's over, torn up, gone. Silence. You don't owe me that update, she replied. But, thank you. He hesitated. I messed up, Nora. You were right, I was afraid, not of you, of what you made me feel. Which was what? Alive, he said, like I was allowed to love again, and that terrified me. Her eyes burned, but she blinked fast. And what do you want now, Damien? A pause. I want to stop being afraid. Nora didn't answer right away, because forgiveness isn't automatic, and trust doesn't grow back overnight. But sometimes, it's enough to hear someone finally say, I see you, and mean it. You're going to have to show up, she said. I will. And not just for Edwin. I know. And for the first time in years, Damien James, billionaire, widower, father, felt ready to begin. 3 days later, a package arrived at Nora's door. No signature, no note. Just a soft, folded piece of fabric wrapped in brown paper. It was the baby cloth, the one she used to carry Edwin, washed, pressed, folded with care. She didn't cry. Not right away, she just held it to her chest and breathed. That evening she got the second surprise. A knock at the door, not loud, not demanding, just asking. When she opened it, Damien stood there. No suit, no posture, no performance. Just a man holding his son. Edwin squealed when he saw her, arms reaching, body wiggling forward with a joy that didn't need translation. We missed you, Damien said. She looked at him. Or just the way I carry him. Both, he said, but mostly the way you carry me, without even trying. They didn't rush inside. They stood in the hallway between two lives, two decisions, two hearts, and for once, Damien didn't talk about fixing things. He talked about learning them. I want to show you something, he said, reaching into the baby bag. He pulled out a wrap, the same kind she used but new, bright, vibrant, Ghanaian patterns. I watched a video, practiced on a pillow, he admitted. I probably tied it wrong. Nora smiled, the first real one in days. Let me help you. They sat together in her living room. No mansion, no marble, no maids, just a man, a woman, a child, and the truth between them. She helped him wrap Edwin to his chest. He fumbled, laughed, shook his head. How do you make this look so easy? Because it's not about tying it right, she said softly. It's about showing him he's safe, held, close. He looked at her, eyes full of apology, yes. But more than that, hope. Later, Damien stood up, Edwin strapped to his chest for the first time. The baby giggled, and when Damien looked in the mirror, he didn't see his father. He didn't even see himself. He saw a chance. "I'm not asking you to come back as the help," Damien said, voice low. "I'm asking you to come back as family." Nora's eyes welled up, not because she needed him, but because finally someone saw her as more than what she had survived. She nodded. "Then let's raise him together." And in that moment, everything that had been broken wasn't just repaired, it was rewritten. They stepped outside into the soft Miami dusk. No thunder now, no silence either, just the sound of Edwin's laugh and the quiet promise of something real. If this story touched something in you, don't just scroll, subscribe. Because stories like this aren't just content, they're reminders that even in a world full of pride, pain and prejudice, and love still finds a way. Let's build something real, together.